Okay, we're all set. Welcome everybody. Thank you all so much for tuning in today and happy Tuesday. We are joined today by Dreamers and Doers member and brilliant individual, Lisha Davis. She is the founder, is a founder, and she's the former CEO of Vanguard's Innovation Studio. We're going to gain an inside look into the world of innovation careers. So we're going to discover how to transition into a career in innovation, strategy, management, or venture building, and also learn what skills are needed to be successful in those areas. So companies are increasingly appointing these chief innovation officer positions and developing growth strategies. So understanding these roles and these business models can be crucial for professionals who want to transition into innovation-focused careers. So Lisha is the founder of Arable Ventures, and as I mentioned, the former CEO of Vanguard's Innovation Studio. Throughout her diverse and impressive career, she has managed large P&Ls and built, launched, and scaled new products and businesses with a high emphasis on growing the best performing teams and cultures. So as an angel investor and a startup advisor, Lisha teaches an MBA course on open innovation and strategic alliance at Temple University and is a lifelong advocate of diverse founders and funders. We are so excited and honored to learn from you today, Lisha. We know how valuable your time is. We're really grateful to you for investing in Dreamers and Doers in this way. And with that, I will very excitedly hand it over to you.
Wow, thank you so much, Nicole. Keep you in my pocket. Wish I could take you with me to start every day. Thank you so much. It's awesome to be here. I love D&D. This is a tremendous community, and I get so much out of these things and learn so much from the community as well. So definitely my pleasure and honor to do it. Um, the origins of today's topic, obviously I've been working formally in the space of corporate innovation venture building for the last 13 plus years. But over the last year or so, I've noticed a lot of people reaching out to me, and a good group of them happen to be dreamers and doers, asking about breaking into this world of innovation as a formal career path. And so after, 4 or 5 people, I was like, maybe we should just talk about it as a group. And, maybe there's other folks who have questions or are curious, who may already be in this field. So I put together just like a short collection of materials that could aid in our conversation. I'm really hoping this would be more of a conversation format. You guys will come to know me as extremely candid and direct, as New York as you could get. So ask me anything. No question is too big or small. My hope is to maybe help shed some light into this field, this career path. Um, yeah, of course, happy to. I get it. Um, and answer any questions you may have. So, with that being said, how about we dive right in? Okay, cool. And thank you for those of you who may have submitted questions in advance. So, I did take a look at that. Come on, computer, you could do it. And try to incorporate it into some of these materials as much as possible. But maybe as I get to the agenda slide, if you guys see something that's not currently covered or will be covered, please just give me a shout and I'll try to work that in. That sound okay? Okay, awesome. So super quick, a little bit about myself. You can definitely look at my LinkedIn, but I have been a strategist, an operator with P&L responsibility, and a formal, I guess, innovation person, innovation leader for the last 13 years of my journey has been this particular leg. And I would say, while I'd love to tell you I had so much foresight to get into this field, I knew this is going to be the future, not even a little bit. This definitely happily, serendipitously landed on me. My very first role and assignment in this space, I think I got called into the principal's office, and then there was this assignment and everyone took a step back and I was just too slow to react. And I said, okay, I guess I'll take a stab at this and do it. And then began this crazy love affair with this world of innovation and working methodologies underneath it that we'll talk about. But the last job that I held, as Nicole articulated, was serving as the first head of innovation at Vanguard, where my job was to look into the future, identify promising white spaces, and then build valid solutions, be it products, services, or businesses or partnerships to fill those spaces. Just a fancy way of saying, had the good fortune of building some real winners. Nothing like your first $1 billion business, you never forget it. and some really, really good things that didn't work out. And boy, you learn a lot from those honorable burials. But about 5 years ago, I left my world in corporate and started to and decided to go back to entrepreneurship and launched a company called Arable Ventures, which is what I run today. And we are a boutique innovation and venture strategy consulting firm, where I'd say 80% of the time we still serve the Fortune 500s and global firms to help them innovate and grow through scale. And the other 20% of the time, we support the startup community directly and primarily through our partnerships with incubators, accelerators, funds, and venture studios. This is just a snapshot of our website and a little smattering of some of our offerings. So if any of these things look interesting to you, your firm, business partners that you've been working with, please feel free to give me a shout. We can talk about those. Cool. Okay, ready? Let's maybe do a click into this. So I really try to aggregate from the questions that I've heard over time and in one-on-one sessions that I've had with folks. And so wanted to today give you a little bit of a primer and an overview of the world of corporate innovation and venturing. Apologies for people who may already be in this. If it feels a little bit too foundational, please feel free to cut in with questions that are maybe more nuanced or specific. But I wanted to cover, so what is corporate innovation and venture building? You know, what does that entail? Why is it so interesting now? And what are the different flavors of it? Let's talk about the different types of roles that you may commonly find in this space. And we can talk about the differences between them as well. Someone submitted a really great question about the entrepreneur versus the intrapreneur journey. And so what is an intrapreneur and what are kind of the trade-offs, pros and cons that you can expect if you're working in that capacity within the confines of an organization or enterprise? A little bit of branding and storytelling if you're thinking about entering into the space or you're ready to make that transition. And then just like a catch-all, right? If we didn't get all your questions answered along the way, if there's anything else that's missing, let's reserve some space and time for that. Sound good? Is there anything right off the bat that people are dying to know that's not here? Please raise it.
Question about your previous slide. What is POC as service?
Oh, great question. Oops, sorry. This right here, proof of concept. Yeah. That's a really great call out, Sandra. Sorry. In innovation land, we are notorious for being acronym junkies. So please keep me honest here. Yeah, there may be others. I forewarn you now that I look at it. Yeah. Cool. Okay. All right, then let's dive in. So what the heck is corporate innovation and why? Right, so I would say this has really taken off in the last 10 years. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I first got into this space, there was hardly any chief innovation officers. Those of us who had that seat would see each other all the time at industry events, cross-industry events. It was kind of a pretty small circle. And over time, kind of this domain and this space as a career path really started to grow. We know kind of all of the reasons underneath it, right? Business is incredibly competitive, tons of tools like tech and data that's just fueling the proliferation of new products and services being offered. Kind of the price of entry is now lower than ever. So you have all of these large companies that are now finding themselves competing not just against its traditional competitors, and you'll hear things like digital transformation, you know, client experience, this and that. Yeah, digital first, mobile first, like all of that is already happening in the business environment, but they're also finding themselves now competing against new entrants, specifically in the startup community, that are faster, creative, hungry, nimble, and through the access of technology is really pushing themselves into traditional domains in a pretty substantial way. So I think today you'd be hard pressed to find any company, I would say mid-size and above, who doesn't understand that they have to innovate, or else that this is no longer a nice to do. 10 years ago, this was not the case. I mean, believe it or not, we used to be in all of these board meetings to say like, should we have an actual innovation function? Like, should we dedicate some resources and people to this? And today, I mean, it's pretty wide scale. But the good news is it's still nascent and early enough. The race is on for models to really stand up and work. And I would say most companies are either at the earlier stages or what I would consider that awkward teenage kind of adolescent phase of trying to figure out how to do this and do this well. But the real thing that's at stake here is about competitive advantage and sustainable growth and differentiation, right? So what got you here is not going to keep you here. You need to explore and invent into the future. And companies are now more keen than ever to figure out how to do that. So what I've also framed out here as like 3 buckets of key questions may help you decide and also understand what are the different types of corporate innovation models that exist. So first and foremost, why are they doing this? What does success and their ultimate aspirations look like? Is it about they want to build and launch new products and businesses? So outcomes and outputs, maybe. Do they want to stand up new skills and capabilities internally so that they can essentially learn how to do this for themselves over time? Maybe. For some, they really want to shift their culture and introduce values, working principles that's very much anchored in creativity, problem solving, and innovation building. Okay. Some companies have even gone as far as to kind of incorporate this into their new leadership standards and requirements. So, okay, how do you do that? And then maybe it's also about competitive positioning and brand. I'm sure you guys have heard lots of companies say, and we've all heard of like best place to work. We're not finding ourselves attracting the best talent in the last X years, or it's really hard to find new young talent that's eager to come to a place like this. Is our brand stodgy? How do people perceive us? So there's a host of reasons why companies really want to dedicate resources formally to do this work. So I think first and foremost, understanding what that looks like, what that is from a goals perspective is really important. Because if you're saying, I just care about outcomes and outputs, I can make the argument that you don't need necessarily a formal innovation team, a dedicated large staff and set of resources internally. You can probably buy it or invest in it for cheaper and faster, right? So I think that already starts to branch us off around what type of model they may be using. And so that's kind of the second question, which is, what does that look like in the marketplace? Have folks heard of this build, buy, partner, or invest set of options? So do you want to build the innovation yourself? Do you want to buy it, buy a startup, buy a company? Do you want to partner to create it? Do you want to invest in, let's say, the startup community for either their tech or their talent or their products to get after it? And so these different operating models represent various building blocks that can be utilized to get to the goal of an innovative outcome. And then finally, it's important to try to decipher what is within scope of an innovation pipeline or portfolio within an organization. What you're seeing here as like new existing opportunity or solution, as well as the Horizons 1, 2, 3 framework is just, it's actually a little dated and older, but I think it's still relevant. Years ago, McKinsey coined, I can't say they came up with it, but they're master marketers. They branded this Horizons framework to describe the different types of innovation that can take place in an organization with increasing degrees of aspiration. Your Horizon ones are your core innovation, lowercase I. So this is about process improvement. This is about making the core business better, faster, cheaper, taking out waste, increasing efficiencies, things like that. Horizon 2, a little bit higher in growth aspiration. This is about like adjacent products and services to your core. So, now I'm starting to grow and expand beyond what I currently have, but still adjacent and related. And then the Horizon 3 stuff is the moonshot stuff that we probably think about when we, usually envision capital I innovation, right? It's sexy, it's big, it's like scientists experimenting with planting food on Mars. It's like Google trying to throw up hot air balloons so that you can get Wi-Fi in every part of the globe. Like, okay, it's technologies and putting together new building blocks to create business models that are unseen from before, right? So the argument is all different forms are good. And in fact, if you want to be an innovative organization over time, you're going to need to have a diversified portfolio approach of all 3 different types of projects, but where you focus, how you start, the mix and blend of your portfolio absolutely matters in terms of, what you can expect for the results and how long it might take you to get there. right? So if you're a person who's super invigorated by only doing that big capital I sexy stuff, but you know the organization that you're interested in interviewing for is like really just focused on core innovation, just know that there's going to be a pretty substantial delta in your expectations of the work. Does that make sense? Let me just pause there for a second. This is probably the most text heavy slide in this whole thing, so fear not. But thoughts and reactions so far? Is it making sense? Is it resonating with people? Okay, cool. I'm gonna take no questions right now for good and just keep going, but please, seriously, cut in with questions, drop it in the chat. Okay, so if that makes sense to you from kind of a foundational objectives and goals standpoint, let's look at kind of the most common team formations and setups out there in the business community. So if you look at kind of this rubric around internally built versus externally sourced and kind of the gradation along the lines, let's look at an internal innovation studio or lab to the left. So this is company X standing up a dedicated unit with FTEs, resources, dollars allocated to then like tinker away, explore, incubate, and try to find a there for something that's valuable, right? Swimming our way to the right a little bit. If you don't have that, then what some organizations have is this embedded business team or innovation team model. So it's essentially like a train the trainer, coach the coach, or an internal consulting model, whereby there is a innovation team. It's usually smaller, that they're not builders and doers as much as they are advisors, informers, and coaches. So they'll get deployed across the enterprise. So however many business lines, that whichever business unit has a innovation project that they're working on, this team can embed alongside them or hold their hand as they're working through it. Okay, let's keep going. All right, now, if you are thinking about partnering with incubators, accelerators, venture studios, so this is your Techstars, this is your Plug and Play, this is your High Alpha, maybe some of you guys have heard of these names, where they exist to partner with corporations to help them explore the unknown, introduce them to startups, maybe build and launch something, maybe build and launch a POC together, right? And then now kind of the all the way to the right side, I don't want to build anything myself, but maybe through corporate venture capital. So same thing as VCs, but now with corporate investors. So CVC is what it's called. And oftentimes they might sit alongside a corporate development or corp dev team or M&A team to be exploring how can I invest in prominent technologies or startup solutions, or possibly even acquire them. So we're bringing in that innovation from the outside. Right. All of them are good. All of them have its pros and cons, as you see. I've been in all, I've worked across all. It's not that one's right and one's wrong. They all have its unique benefits and challenges. And in fact, today you'll find many companies and organizations are leveraging a combination of these models. Okay. Which ones are folks familiar with or heard more about, and maybe less?
I think 1 and 3 I'm fairly familiar with, but the other
Okay.
two, and especially corporate venture capital, I'm not familiar with that.
Got it. Okay. Is that of interest? Because I can talk a little bit more about that when we get to the roles section.
Yeah, I mean, all of this is of interest.
Okay. I'll get into all of it, but I just want to make sure.
I'm curious about the venture studios, you know, and how a company would really partner with one of those and still own the IP, or
Yeah.
if that's, that's more of a partnership. Like, yeah, I'm curious about how that works in the business.
Yeah. So maybe I'll take that head on now. It really depends, Jen. Jen, was that your question?
Yep, thanks.
Yeah. It really depends. In some instances, well, it depends on the partner and it depends on the model, right? So like in the incubator accelerator side, most of the times that corporate partnership is structured to be a multi-year contract. So let's say you have a 3-year or 5-year. each year that accelerator incubator partner is on the hook to introduce you X number of startups that meet the problems that you give them, that you want to have solved, right? Or, let's say you guys have strategic planning and you say the focus areas that we want to swim in is, I don't know, future of work, AI-driven efficiency plays, and the intersection of health and wealth. I don't know, riff, right? I'm riffing. So then they will essentially scour the universe and within their network of promising startups and companies that fit that bill, and will introduce them to that corporate partner. So that corporate partner then can either like invest in them, take a regular BD relationship. They might say, okay, startup Y, let's try to maybe bespoke a POC together, work on building something together, any variety of that. And so in each of those instances, kind of that IP question may look a little bit different. If the corporate partner is trying to be a venture studio themselves, or is going to lean into an existing venture studio. So High Alpha is an example of one. They're probably the more prominent ones right now. It just depends on how they structure that up. If it's a shorter term engagement or a longer term relationship. And my understanding is there would be instances where the IP is solely the corporate partners because they're sponsoring. And there might be instances where they're both co-investing and therefore would be kind of divvying that up.
Okay.
Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, it seems like there's a lot in that one in particular.
Yeah.
Like there's, a lot of different avenues. And I guess, like, is there ever an instance where, you just hire, a small consulting firm that will then innovate around your value prop, or innovate in sort of your sector, outside your sector, leveraging your supply chain? And is that also in that third section?
Yeah, it's such an astute question. Yes, what you don't see here is another like bucket altogether, which is around like essentially like problem solving partners. And that's the world of academia, that is agencies and consultancies, that's tech shops, that's like market research firms. That's kind of all of these companies who are guns for hire that the company will say, I'm trying to solve X problem or try to get to Y solution. And they will just hire those partners in to either sit alongside their teams and do with, or just hire them outright to do for, to kind of solve that problem at hand. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But
So
even
potentially there could be a fifth bucket then.
Yeah, I mean, these
Maybe sits right in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. These are models through the lens of the corporate side. So even if you're applying that strategy, you still need to have some type of a team set up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that model is like most commonly found here. I'm an innovation studio, and we had this at Vanguard. We worked on a lot of things independently ourselves and built them and launched them. And then we also hired a ton of agencies and consultancies and, kind of mom and pop shops on the outside to support us across projects. We also, worked with the business a ton. And we also had partnerships, in these other two buckets. So there has to be kind of a host or a home, a champion of where it's going to live within the enterprise itself. And most commonly, it's like either the first or second bucket, if we're going to use the let's hire folks from the outside to sit alongside us and help us solve it model. Yeah. Cool. I guess I lied. Maybe this is even more text heavy than the last slide, but I promise this is it. Everything else is like peachy from here. Cool. Okay, so let's look at some roles. Yeah, I think some of it is pretty self-explanatory. So maybe let's go to the top row first. And when I say corporate and enterprise, I'm probably meaning mid-sized and large companies, right? This may look very different in a startup structure. So we'll kind of suspend that line of thinking for a second. So in a large company, today, there's so many roles and there's like new flavors being invented each day. But let's look at the ones that are most commonly found. You've got the Chief Innovation Officer, right? Kind of the head of the table. And that person, they're all me. That person is kind of responsible for setting the vision and the agenda of what innovation looks like and means within the enterprise, defining the portfolio. So what types of projects and ventures are we going to be exploring? And then delivering that for impact. And then obviously monitoring it and reporting back, usually to I don't know, the CEO, the C-suite, if they are a member of the C-suite themselves, or perhaps they might be reporting into a member pretty senior within the organization, but they're kind of the top of the house that is responsible for all enterprise top-down innovation activity within a firm, right? If you are building, buying, partner, or investing, but it's all under the innovation umbrella, it might all filter up to you as well, right? In some organizations, it's split off. So you've got innovation, which only does like incubation or labs or the things that you're building or insourcing. You've got a person who's in charge of M&A and corp dev, right? So who's kind of buying things versus maybe a person who is only working through external partnerships, blah, things like that. So I'm also kind of breaking these things out so you guys can see it. It kind of corresponds almost 1-for-1 from the last slide we looked at. So if you're incubating or you're running a lab, maybe you're just overseeing the portfolio of projects and you may be sourcing ideas, working on those ideas and launching them yourself, or working in conjunction with resources and partners from the outside to do it. Right? The head of the corporate venture capital fund is investing in startups, either for solutions that are already designed, the technology underlying, or the talent you just really find compelling. So you're doing a lot of the activities that you would expect of a traditional VC. You're deal sourcing, you're doing due diligence, right? You're looking under the hood. You might be working closely in conjunction with the head of innovation or, the incubation or labs, in that you might find something promising and maybe you want to see a POC first before you commit to invest. This partnerships role has exploded in the last 5 years. Like in the last couple of years where everything came to a screeching halt in corporate innovation, the only role that was being flipped over again and again was still head of partnerships. And I think this is largely driven by companies realizing, okay, I shouldn't do this by myself because I don't have all the know-how. I'm not that fast. And, maybe I don't have the talent that I need, or the talent that I have that I consider very high potential and great are super busy. And so they are forming a lot of partnerships with outside ecosystem partners, be it academia, startups, tech, other industry partners, to kind of get after it. And so this has I've watched this in the last 5 years literally become a career track in and of itself. Corporate development and M&A, right? You're acquiring promising companies and startups. You might be also working closely with CVC. So I invested in something interesting, or you're going to buy the whole thing right up front, or you might invest in it first and then later decide to acquire it because it's going really well, right? And then this, I don't know what to call it. Sometimes I see it called new ways of working. Sometimes it's like human capital related. This might sit within the business. It might sit within the chief innovation office. It might be an HR. This is essentially kind of an internal consulting or capability building and culture group role that is responsible for permeating the tools of the trade. So as you can imagine, innovation work as a discipline requires a different set of working principles, frameworks, tools than traditional business work. And so things like design thinking, lean startup, agile, some of these methods have been all the rage, to the tune that some companies have actually stood up teams and roles dedicated to staying on top of those working tools and then teaching it to the rest of the enterprise. Okay. And then if we were to click down a little bit to more kind of practical and in the trenches roles, what might that look like on an innovation team, on an innovation project team? Oftentimes, and this is by no means exhaustive, but commonly what you see covered, there's usually like a business lead of some sort, and all of these are, as the name suggests, focus on their domain of expertise. They might be working closely with the business to understand the problem, to understand their requirements and specs. They might be responsible for putting together the business case, for vetting the market sizing, really understanding the market dynamics and competitive intel underneath this problem, as well as the solution you're trying to create, right? Product owner is pretty self-explanatory, the shepherd that's going to take the solution through from A to Z. UX, UI, design, right? Now we're talking about the experience. It doesn't always have to be digital, but it's, common that most solutions today have some digital component, but what does the user experience and interface look like and feel like to really bring to life the solution in the most effective way? Data and analytics, super all the rage, Gen AI, OpenAI, ChatGPT, and then kind of your engineering team, right? Front to back end and kind of full stack, oftentimes representing the build chops side of the equation. So there's others that are oftentimes involved as well, but kind of oftentimes 80% of the time, what you'll see seated on an innovation team role comprises of these things. Oh, and then if you're not in the mix kind of like this, there is this interesting hybrid role that, again, over the last 5-10 years has become super popular, which is the EIR role. It stands for Entrepreneur in Residence. These are full-time or part-time roles. It can be a co-founder or a coach model, whereby if you're doing a coach model, you're essentially sitting alongside this team to be their coach, their advisor, their guide, their handholder, because you've done this many times before, and you can really help them accelerate and be successful. Co-founder is, you might be, actually the product owner yourself or the business lead. You could come in at the beginning when you're exploring the problem space, or you can come in after the winning solution has been tested and proofed. But essentially, you're going to be responsible for helping to build, launch, go to market with this thing. Many companies adopt this model. Citi has, Morgan Stanley has, for example, whereby they're in the habit of hiring EIRs from the outside. Many of them are oftentimes former agency folks. There maybe came from other corporate innovation studio labs roles. They're former founders that have had exits. And so it's them trying to find folks who have done this before and know how to do these things well to support early and ongoing teams. Let me pause there. Does that make sense? Any questions based on this? Okay, so then let's talk about intrapreneurship. There's a lot of good, and there's also some trade-offs. I should have named this just trade-offs in general, because I don't know if it's cons. It's just different. When you think about an intrapreneur, so a person who is entrepreneurial within a company versus an entrepreneur, a founder, perhaps, right, who's running their own business, like what's the difference, and what are the things that seem to stand out? It's really one of risk appetite and reward as a trade-off. So, what you get is an intrapreneurship role can be super fun, exciting, fast-paced, just like a founder or entrepreneurial role would be, right? You certainly have the opportunity to drive impact to the business, to the enterprise, and sometimes even to the industry. More often than not, you are a separate and distinct role, team, maybe even group and P&L, from the core business, right? So your job is to help figure out what is going to be in the future, or, where the puck is going to move. You're going to have to utilize new ways of working. So all of those tools that we talked about previously, these are your new waters that you swim in. And best of all, these are paid full-time roles, right? So if you love this type of work, but you also love a paycheck, or you're in a time and season in your life where you can't afford to have no paycheck, right? These are all the benefits of working in a founder type role, but with corporate backing inside of an enterprise, right? And then let's not forget, right? You are not an unknown entity, startup X. You are working for large company Y that has brand, that has recognition, that has resources, that has scale, that has data, that has customers, that already has distribution channels and partners. So you're kind of benefiting from all of those tailwinds in the process of building and launching something new. So we love it. Great, fantastic. And now, 10, 12 years into it, this is actually a career path. And so there's many companies across all industries that actually have roles like this, right? Cons, trade-offs. Well, for some of that safety and stability, yeah, there's a price for it. So you may be getting a paycheck, right? That's steady. And by the way, some of these roles are quite handsomely paid. And so, you're getting to paid to do great work and also learn. But more often than not, there isn't the same upside as you would find if you were just an entrepreneur or founder on the outside, right? So if you're the one taking completely the risk on the outside, you're usually one that's able to gain from the upside. But here, no. There are more and more teams where there's models where you'll have some equity, right? But the equity is like a couple of percent, maybe, basis points. And this is not, you own 100% of the company or 50% of the company. No, it's not like that. You're working in a large company. So even though you're a separate and distinct business, or P&L, like you're still beholden to the mothership. And so whatever politics, bureaucracy, ways of working, culture, you're not going to be insulated from that, right? The projects that you work on, you guys can make a really strong case. And if your chief innovation officer or leadership team is really influential, you probably are going to get to work on some interesting things, right? The company will have a prioritization process on how to select, but let's face it, you don't get to select yourself. And so you might work on projects that may be super interesting to you or ones that are not as much, right? Believe it or not, just because a proof of concept, a solution is amazing and it's validated, it's not always going to go to market. So, because guess what? All of a sudden your competitor beat you to it. And now you need to go back to the drawing board. Or all of a sudden an industry regulation changed, right? And now everybody's grappling with that. Or just in the course of business planning, we're in business planning season right now for most companies, other priorities bumped up in front of you in line. And so your thing can't launch next year, but maybe the year after, right? So there's a host of reasons why, kind of a there may not materialize. And even if it does, as you see this last point, you may or may not be going with it, right? So there's some roles, the way that they're designed is you solve the problem, you come up with a solution and you validate it, and then you hand it off to somebody else to go to market with it, right? Maybe you hand it off to the EIR we just saw. And so you also have to think about kind of the A to Z cycle of that experience as well. And then also just keep in mind that many companies, most companies, even today, spin in is the default launch pad, meaning if you validate a solution, it's going to go to market within the company and leverage its brand and resources to go to market at scale. It's possible and more likely that it's not going to be a separate entity by itself, that it's not going to launch through a completely, different moniker, a different platform, or maybe even be white labeled or launched through a partnership or a JV. Those are all possible and it does happen, but the majority of the time, it feels like the default or automatic option for how something launches is within under the umbrella and name of the parent company. Questions and comments about this? Is this like what people are expecting? Is this surprising to anybody?
I think this was very thorough. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As I coach more and more people, like I'm a coach, I have my own career coaching company, and some folks are interested in figuring out what they can do internally. So this is super helpful for me. So thank you so
Oh,
much.
good. I'm so glad.
Yeah, because it helps me understand, okay, how does that actually work? How do I, help guide people into these
Yeah.
roles?
Yeah. I appreciate that. Thanks, Catalina. Yeah, so it's good and it's also different, right? So just enter with your eyes wide open. All right. We're kind of in the final stretch here. So if none of that scared you off and you're like, yeah, corporate innovation, still love this thing. Okay, let's help you find your fit. And look, I think the good news is because this as a job family is like a newer phenomenon, right? Let's say 10 years-ish or so, plus or minus a few years. It hasn't been around forever and ever. Most people who are in those roles today serendipitously got there. They somehow swam and ended up there. They got there by luck. They got there by transfer, by referrals, whatever. So it's not like you're missing out. Oh, I didn't go to school for this. I didn't start off my career on this. None of us who are in this business at this point did. And so let's just strip that off and take a look at underneath the covers. What are the maybe skill categories that would be most useful, or the activities that you might find yourself doing the most as you're preparing to maybe enter into this field. So Fahrenheit 212, which is one of the creative agencies, innovation agencies that I've worked with for ages, used this like money and magic analogy. So innovation work is really a blend of left brain and right brain thinking. And so, you know, the left brain side, what they mean is the money side is a little bit more of the businessy type of stuff that we normally think about. And then the right brain side, the creative side, is more of the magic stuff, right? Is a little bit harder to quantify. You kind of invent it, you know it when you see it type. And so I'm going to use those like loose monikers for now to describe these buckets of activities and skill sets. And then I'm also adding this third, which is very much about relational organizational. Like this is a highly stakeholder management, political maneuvering, understanding the org, getting things done through people, you know, that type of thing. That kind of A plus B plus C equals allowing you to identify the best opportunities, come up with the best solutions, make the business case to get funding, and allowing you to build, launch, and deliver value back to the business in roles like this. Okay. So money, businessy side, this is like skills and activities such as market research, right? Specifically like quant, this is your quant surveys and things like that. Competitive intel and analysis, market trends and news, right? Do you understand various business models within your industry and domain? Unit economics and the business case itself, dollars and cents, how are you gonna make money? What are margins? What's the P&L look like? Pricing strategies, how are you gonna price your new product or service? How do you go to market, right? How does this fit within the grander scheme of budgeting and annual planning and the strategy for the enterprise? And how do you come up with things like metrics and key performance indicators to tell if you're successful or not, right? Pretty businessy. Magic, creative side, this is more things like customer research or primary research, where there's a lot of qualitative interactions, interviews, focus groups, you know, ride-alongs, journaling. You're doing a ton of ideation, right? Individually, in groups and sessions, a lot of synthesis and turning that into insights. You're developing various concepts and knowing how to do that with fluency. You're prototyping, you're testing your prototypes and turning that back into a learning loop. You're gonna, based on that, come up with pivots and new learnings for your product. You know, when you're ready, you're gonna put together a product roadmap and obviously pitch decks, right? To sell your idea to the powers that be. So these are some like very common activities and skills that you're gonna need to draw on. And then in between, you know, stakeholder management and business sponsored leadership management, dealing with investors, dealing with your venture board, your innovation board. You know, there's going to be shared service functions that you'll need to rely on, such as legal, risk, compliance, corporate communications, data and engineering. You know, that's not going to be necessarily found in your role or your specific project team. So how do you manage all of that? Jen asked a great question about external partnerships, such as with agencies and consulting partners. Okay, so yeah, you might be managing some of those relationships. You might have separate teams for building, testing, launching. You might be working closely with PR, and corporate comms and brand, right? Because some of these things that you're going to cook up is going to have a big splash, and dealing with industry organizations and platforms. So it's kind of a host of these things. I would say, you know, depending upon your role, the more senior you are, the more probably the middle that you have to do. And the more practitioner you are working on the actual solution and project yourself, the more bookends that you might have to find yourself doing. But overall, if you're thinking about a career in innovation and kind of growing up through that career path, these are commonly the buckets of things that you'll be expected to do. Questions, comments? Yay, eek, exciting, yuck. Like what's the vibe here?
Exciting.
Okay. Okay. Hopefully, like many people are looking at this is like, yeah, this is like not a mystery. I could do a lot of these things, or I've already done a lot of these things. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's
That's
actually
like,
so exciting. I didn't even know this existed. So like, thank you.
oh, good, good. Yeah, good.
Thank you for the knowledge. And I guess my question is how do you break into this? This is fascinating.
Ah, okay. All right. I'm going to move to this then. All right. So, how do you break into this? Most of us did not come into this. Although now, this generation, starting at like business schools probably 5 years ago, they are starting to teach this now. Like they teach dual tracks of like how to be a founder and an entrepreneur. And they're also teaching this like they're not calling it, sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're not calling it innovation outright. They're calling it like lean startup, design thinking methods, that type of thing, product development. And so this is starting to be taught. But for those of us who are like already grown-ups, we didn't come into this, what might you do? So as you saw previously, look, a lot of these things you've done before in other roles in your past life. The underlying skill sets you already have, and even if you haven't done it, you know you can do it. And so this is kind of, I have found it effective when I'm advising people to kind of put together this like skills plus domain expertise plus the why formula to storytell and like brand for your fit, right? So first with the skills, so you think about how you might describe your experiences through the lens of these buckets that we talked about here, right? Like you don't have to use the words money magic because that might not resonate with them, but it's kind of this idea that I'm bringing left brain, right brain, and relational skills to the table, right? You want to like highlight overarching themes that you know is going to speak to those categories in a way that's conducive, compatible with innovation work. Things like, I'm super comfortable with ambiguity and change. I thrive in fast-paced environments, right? I have a test and learn mindset. I make decisions based on data. And you can give tons of examples about that, right? And then what's great about innovation work is it cuts across project types, industries, and roles. And so you come from all different walks of life. Don't be afraid to pull from those various experiences to kind of put together, stitch together that quilt of skills you want to highlight, right? Domain expertise is super valued. So this is like, what industry or domain or vertical do you come from, right? Maybe your domain is, I'm really great at marketing. Okay, so then in addition to those transferable skills that's compatible with innovation, you can then talk about expertise there. Maybe you come from financial services or healthcare, and you should talk about that as an industry, right? Lots of different ways that you can get after this. What I found to be really impressive, at this point, I've probably interviewed close to 3,000 people over the course of the last 20 plus years, 14 of which was all about innovation. It's always great if you are showcasing what you know about the industry, what's changing, what you'd like to change, and why. And particularly come to the table with ideas on what potential shifts and emerging trends to watch out for, or ideas you might have if you were to work for company X. So if you're interviewing for an innovation role within a healthcare company, don't just research about the company itself, but also the industry and some trends and what's happening around it. And as you're leaning into that expertise, you can then talk to, hey, I noticed that this is happening, or, one of your competitors is really doubling down in this particular trend. I'd be curious to explore here. Here's why. I'd love to bring my expertise working in here to work on projects like this. Here's why. Right. And then finally, just putting it all together, right? Like you're kind of hitting them over the head, right? I've got transferable skills that would be really great for innovation. I know your industry and business well. Okay, so let's put those things together and say, this is really a natural connection between your past work and roles and your exploration of this role, right? So it might be something like, hey, I've marketed great products for the last 10 plus years, which has really led me to a passion of wanting to build great products for consumers from the start, right? Like I don't want to just wait until something great exists for me to market and sell it. I actually want to be a part of helping to create it from the beginning, right? You can talk about why the timing is really right for you to make a move now. And when you look forward to bringing to the table day one versus learning over time. right? It shows kind of incentive and intentionality, but it also kind of explains the why now question that many employers want to ask, but they may be shy to. And then be sure to provide a few examples of where you've excelled, particularly at taking initiative, trying something new, maybe failing something. Like those are kind of magic words that innovation interviewers are listening for. Oh, and by the way, they're all going to ask you, what do you find most exciting and innovative today? So don't be caught behind the 8 ball on that. Like, think about it a little and come up with something. Yeah, there's tons of tools out there today. So, I think this is recorded, and so you can definitely get access to this and you can get in touch with me afterwards. But so many learning series now, Lynda, Coursera, edX, LinkedIn Learning, Udemy, Masterclass, Knowable, Teachable, everything that's kind of, if you took a look at this list here across these middle buckets, everything about how to do those things is on these platforms, right? In addition, you could get certification. There's exec ed if you really want to double down. You can supplement or work on pro bono projects. You can interview someone who's already working the role that you covet. So many industry events and conferences, podcasts, thought leadership that's being shared. Just plug in. Right. Yeah, and that's kind of it. So these are just some of my lessons, having worked in companies and then now on the other side, advising companies on doing innovation work over time. For those of you who might find yourself in roles like that, what you're going to realize over time is there's so many things that you'll learn, but these are some of the top that have been evergreen over time, which is there's like going to be a big difference between client focus and client centric. Every company will say they're client focused. We do this for the client. It's what's best for them. But client centricity actually says, so how do you work to make sure that you're understanding client needs from the beginning, designing with them in mind, testing with them to make sure that when something goes to market, it is actually what they desire and what would be effective, right? And so the underpinnings of good innovation, product, service development work shows up very differently, across companies. Founders and operators are both super valued, and the characteristics of a growth stage founder and a run stage leader are both necessary and useful in the world of corporate innovation, right? Early stage, you might need to lean more into behaving like one, and once something takes off, the sensibilities of being a large scale operator still kick in, right? So it's not kind of either or, but both. It's pretty self-explanatory. Innovation is not just about the ideas, right? So many other ingredients goes into this formula. We can separately talk about that. Metrics and progress matters, right? So you're going to need to figure out how to measure progress and report out on that and gain momentum and excitement along the way. This is not just, us kids, cool kids with black turtlenecks behind a dark cloak tinkering away, and then we're going to unveil something to people. You're going to need to bring people along the way. And if you're trying to lean into a innovation culture, either you're the one leading and driving that change, or I don't know, you're trying to evaluate if a company truly has an innovative culture. Ask yourself, is this a moment in time, or is this actually a movement, right? And if it's a movement, there should be evidence that there's more than one group, one person's participation in this way of being, way of working. Cool. Awesome. That's it. So I hope we covered everything. But if not, please email me. I'm happy to find more time with folks to chat about all of this. I know we're at time. Nicole said in the beginning, like, we seldomly go towards the end. Here we are, right at the top of the hour. So I appreciate it. And get in touch with me. Happy to share more and chat more specifically about your situation if you're trying to break into this field.
Lisha, thank
Nicole,
you
back
so
over to you.
much. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, wrap.
Oh my gosh, I just wanted to say thank you for all of this, for your time, for your wisdom, for all of your insights, and also for offering to connect with folks after the fact. It's really generous of you and lovely of you. And I can attest that you're a joy to connect with one-on-one. So I'm excited for people to get a chance to to have FaceTime with you. So thank you for everything today, and thank you all for showing up and joining. It was wonderful to see all of you, and I'm just wishing everybody a wonderful rest of your week, and can't wait to see you on the next one. Thanks everybody. Thanks, Lisha.
Guys, have a good one. Bye.
Bye everyone.